So today I got to chop it up with Rob Hulse. He's a good friend of mine. He is a former D1 athlete at Merrimack College. He played football there, and now he's a full-time trainer over at Drive Custom Fit in Salem, New Hampshire. Rob not only started to pursue DJing in the last few months, but has really picked up his social media content and personal brand. He's doing an amazing job marketing himself, his business, and adding DJing as a hobby into that. He's doing amazing. I love to see him grow, and I think you'll find a lot of value from him and what he has to talk about. We talk from everything starting at his background, right, when he was a child, and how he grew up in New Jersey, all the way up until now and everything in between. I think it's a great learning experience for a lot of people to listen to and kind of take bits and pieces from it, see how he overcame some of the things that he did, and how he puts things into perspective.
It's like wanting to actually, were you like into certain podcasts just kind of early on? Is there like a certain measure? I mean, we'll kind of get into it too, but like, is there a certain like MO that you have by doing this now? Or is it kind of one of those things where you're like, I actually just want to see if I can like put some shit out, people actually be interested, and then maybe it's like you're putting stuff out that maybe people want to hear, or that you may think people want to hear, but then at the end of the day, it's like, are you actually genuinely wanting to share that information, or is it something where you're like, I know an audience is going to gravitate towards this, especially even a younger audience. Like, for me, dude, like, I'm super well connected with people. Like, especially, like, in the business world and stuff like that, like, Drive opened up a lot of doors for that. But, like, I mean, when it comes to, like, money and, like, investing and, like, shit like that, like, I'm, like, second to none when it comes to that shit. So I think gravitating toward a younger audience is, like, where you're going to, like, at least from my eyes.
So, like, my whole point of this podcast is, the reason I call it Unestablished Tycoons is because, like, when you think of a tycoon, you think of somebody like Bezos, Musk, like these like crazy wealthy, crazy successful entrepreneurs. And my idea is, like, I don't know if you know Grant Cardone.
Yes,
in real estate.
Guy,
but like, I listen to him and I say, yeah, that's like the light at the end of the tunnel type of guy when he gives advice.
Do you think he's holistic about his approach though?
In
terms of like how he actually comes off, do you think like I mean, obviously now, like, he's obviously worked his way up to this point, and he's obviously, like, I think when anybody in that business light, you gotta have a set of balls, dude. Like, the way he comes off, like, it's confident, it's to the point, it's, like, shit that, like, you also want to hear at the same time, but it's not one of those things where you're, like, it almost sounds like one of those things where it's, like, too good to be true, especially with all, like, the ads and stuff like that he's putting out.
Well, that's the thing. It's, like, it's not. Like, everything that he does is realistic, but the whole point of this is that if I'm going to try and enter the real estate market, like my first deal, I'm not going to listen to a dude who has 10,000 units, who's worth multiple billions of dollars. So my point in saying unestablished is interviewing guys who are like just starting in the business. Like, I had a young realtor, I had a young mortgage lender, I had a young, he's building like an exterior painting business.
See, I like that.
And so
shit.
like I want people to talk about their first few steps getting into the industry. So that this podcast goes to guys who are like 16, 17, 18.
Yeah, all right. So
that's the idea.
So you actually have a target audience.
I have a target audience, which is the younger guys getting into the entrepreneurship.
See, that's great, man, because, like, even for my own self, like, when I start putting content out, especially, like, work-related stuff, regardless of it's, like, screw DJing, like, especially when I started really putting stuff out for, like, training, it was really to, like, let people know that, like, hey, I'm doing something a little different around here.
Yeah.
Like, yes, I'm highly educated. I've had a lot of experience in, a variety of weight rooms and, like, that kind of setting and whatnot. But, like, the individuals in, like, those role model positions, whether my coaches or anything like that, like, they're, like, a prime reason, like, why I do a lot of the things that I do. And I've taken a lot of, like, their own principles in their way. But I think at the end of the day, it's, like, putting your own spin on it. And I think for guys like me and you who are, like, a lot younger, like, it's one of those things where, maybe not people want to trust that at first because, again, you're so raw with it and whatnot. But I think, again, it comes a lot with, like, how you present yourself, your confidence, like, what you're really bringing to the table, and ensuring, like, quality is, like, there, man. That's been my biggest thing since, like, day one.
Well, that's the thing, too. It's, like, the whole point, well, not the whole point of this podcast, but the reason why, like, you see all the cameras and lights, like, so early into this was because I was like, listen, I'm 20 years old. I'm not beating people on experience. I'm going to beat them on quality. So I'm going to have the best looking content. And like I said, I'm getting new mics, so I have the best sounding content. I'm going to have the best...
It's presenting it in a way, like, slowly but surely. Yeah. And I'm glad you're not doing it too fast either, man. Like, I think early on, like, even with when I started training, like, in the first place, like, I had no clue about, like, really designing templates, like, program structures, anything like that. Like, I just knew how to work out just from, like, years of like doing it. Maybe it was right, maybe it was wrong, but I think like setting myself up in positions where like I'm getting in front of people who are better than me.
Yeah.
And again, like I've always been the type of cat that like, even maybe when I was younger, I didn't really take like criticism or like coaching like very, very well. But I think as I've gotten older and I've started to realize like, hey man, if you surround yourself with people that are just better than you no matter what, regardless of the field, you're going to learn a thing or two. Like for me, I always try to like let people know, like when you come and train with me, it's more than like a training experience. Like you're learning something that you're going to be able to take with you for the rest of your life. They're going to be taking with you outside of here. And like for a lot of people, especially going to a gym, it's like lack of confidence or a surety that one, they're doing it the right way, or two, like people are going to really care. And I think the biggest thing I've learned over the years, man, is like screw what anybody else thinks, because like the moment I put more energy and time into that and stuff like that, the more I get in my head, the more things don't get done. You know what I mean? I think now more than ever, I'm at a point where I'm I'm happy, like I'm comfortable with like how things are progressing and going and making the right moves and stuff like that now. But like I'm nowhere near where like I want to be, and like I'm glad. I'm glad, because I think a lot of guys will see that first taste of like success, or like I remember when I first started making like some real money for the first time, and I just blew all that shit right away. Because it's like you don't know, man. You're like I mean, like I'm the first one in my family to go to college, let alone like, you know, play a sport or get a real-time job that like you enjoy. And I think like, especially being a 21-year-old kid, like that's like the most raw point of your life, where you're like, a lot of guys either coming out of school or like they're just not, like, even for my younger siblings, like they're just still trying to figure it out. Like what's the right moves to make. And I think for right now, like you're doing the right things, bro. So I'm excited.
Yeah, no, and like
are we live too, by the way?
Yeah, I just figured,
dude,
I just figured we like chop it up, we just keep going.
So that's I knew you had clicked it. I'm like,
yeah,
no,
because I already see.
Let's get it, man.
But no, dude, like you just brought up a good point too, about like, you know, you're not giving a shit what other people think, because the reality is it's the people, like you said, surrounding yourself by the people who are better. They're the ones who don't give a shit about where you're starting. They don't give a shit about your situation. It's the people who are either like jealous or they're just intimidated that you're about to pass them. Like the people right above you. But the people like you were saying, where you're surrounding yourself and all these doors have opened with these large business owners or whatever, just these successful people, they want nothing but success for you, and they're rooting for you, and they're going to help you any way they can. Yeah,
I think especially like, I mean, kind of like, I'll kind of go into my background a little bit. So obviously like growing up, like, you know, being from New Jersey, I'm one of 5. So like I have 4 brothers, and we obviously, our kind of family dynamic was a little different because my 2 older brothers and my dad's kids. So it was really just me and my 2 younger siblings kind of growing up. And again, like, my parents are as blue collar as they come. Like my dad was a UPS driver. He's actually finishing up retirement like this upcoming year. So like congrats to him. My mom's already retired. Like she was in cosmetology for over 25 years. She was a nanny at some point. So like no matter what, regardless of what situation my parents were in, like they were always constantly working to make sure that we didn't realize that maybe things weren't like the best, or like, you know, especially financially, maybe things were a little bit tougher growing up, maybe even like a little bit kind of over like the last few years. Now like my parents are starting to retire, they're starting to like look, you know, moving down south and stuff like that. Things are more on like the upswing for them, but they never let us like realize like you know, nothing's ever really handed to you at all. So I've always had that kind of like mentality growing up, where like I always had like this weird chip on my shoulder, especially like, you know, getting bullied a lot as a kid. Like I was kind of like a little chubby kid. I wasn't the most skilled guy, but I always tried to like find a way to like put myself out there in front of others. I just want to be accepted. I think getting into fitness for me, like going to a gym for the first time, I was able to finally like be myself and just be comfortable. Like regardless of what I was doing, I definitely didn't know what the hell I was doing at 14, 15. Yeah. But I knew it was the one place I can go away for 2 hours and not worry about anything, like any outside noise or anything like that, and just kind of dial in on my, well, it seemed to be craft. Like I realized early on, especially once things started to click for me, you know, puberty and like, you know, hitting the gym really hard and like starting to see changes in my body and like things actually like going well from a confidence, sports standpoint, all of that. It's like, all right, I'm going to hit the ground running with this. I already knew I wanted to be a trainer when I was 15, 16 years old. And then it started to evolve. Like, oh, I want to own my own gym one day. Oh, I want to like, you know, maybe do, and that's kind of changed over the years. Like I still definitely want to do my own thing, especially being able to set up, you know, my parents and like my family for the future and stuff like that. That's always been a goal for mine. My goal was never like have this big Fortune 500 like, empire, fitness empire, or whatever. For me, it was just like being comfortable, man. Because I've seen how it was, especially for my family, during times where it wasn't comfortable.
Yeah.
And I think for me, no matter what, for me, like, especially financial-wise, like, I never want to have to worry about money because I know how much of a stressor it could be, especially in my first few years. I mean, for training, bro, like, especially after I got recruited out of high school to, go to college and play at Merrimack, I was a 4-year starter there. I was elected a team captain my senior year, like an honorary team captain. I had a lot of respect from like my teammates and stuff like that. And, those are my boys. I know I can call up any one of those guys at any time and, they're going to answer. And I think after I left Merrimack and once football was all said and done, because I've been playing since I was like 6 years old, I had like a big, like, oh shit, like identity crisis kind of moment when I was like 20, 21. So like being in your shoes and like not having a sense of direction and maybe just getting involved with the wrong crowd or getting involved with the wrong things early on and like having to go through like those growing pains a little bit. And I think like, especially anybody that's listening now, like in that position where you may not know like where you want to go, like what you want to do and stuff like that. Like I always thought that was like a negative thing, but at the same time, like there's a lot of good that comes from that because it's supposed to happen. You're not supposed to have it all figured out right away. They've taught you that since you were in grade school that like, oh, by the time you're 20, 21, you're supposed to be moved out on your own, have it all figured out, boom, boom. Yeah. That is not the way things work around. I mean, bro, I can live with my parents now, being 25, and having as much success like early on as I've had, like I would do it in a heartbeat, bro. Yeah. Because it's more like I gotta be really smart about where like, I'm putting, my money, whether I started working, one of my buddies' name is Sean Black. He's a financial advisor for Northwestern Mutual. He hit me up a few months ago, and he played lacrosse at Merrimack. He was a 2 or 3-time All-American. I might get that wrong, but I know he was an absolute piece there, and we were pretty close, like, in college and whatnot, and he hit me up a few months ago. He's like, hey, man, like, I would love to be able to work with you, kind of help you out in your situation, and, like, having guys that I can trust in my corner, especially when it comes to money, because, again, man, like, I'm doing well, but at the same time, I don't know shit when it comes to that avenue, like where to start. So having at least some sort of background with that is like super beneficial for me, and that's why I'm super grateful for Merrimack because it put me in the position that I'm in now, like being at Drive Custom Fit. I've been there since I was a 20-year-old intern. And now, so I started actually, I think I was 21 when I started interning there. It was the fall of 2019. And again, man, like I was just going in 7 days a week, shadowing, trainers, shadowing classes, starting to get my voice on a mic and stuff like that. And, over time it started to, I started getting some attention, started to click and like things were going well. And I was still finishing up school. And then all of a sudden COVID happened. And then like the whole logistics of like the gym like completely changed. And it made my job a lot harder, obviously, because with like the no contact rule and like the masks and like the cleaning and like all that stuff, it was really, really tough. But I think I gained a lot out of like those times because I was able to realize like, hey man, I can still have like these, high level high school, college kids come in, still get some good quality training if they're training in a 4x5 cubicle with one rack. And just having that space and now being able to look back, 2-3 years ago and being where I'm at now and like having the space and the accommodation to be able to do what I want to do, you're seeing how like programs have like kind of like evolved like year to year to year. But I think especially with a lot of the guys and a lot of the people I work with now, it's being personable. It's being able to be myself and letting people realize like, hey, yeah, I'm a trainer, but like I don't got it all figured out. Like I'm not perfect. I still got my things that I'm still trying to work on each and every day, both with myself, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And I think that like over the years, even like the most successful people that I work with, multi-millionaires and like business owners and stuff like that, a lot of them just like want someone to be able to like talk to from like eye to eye level. Yeah. Because either, they're in a higher position where they have to delegate, lower positions on just things they have to do and whatnot, or they're just trying to, communicate in the best way that they can. And just, I think at the end of the day, like for me, just being real and having like real conversations and just like being myself and trying to be funny and make light out of like tough situations. And it's gone a long way for sure. I'm super grateful for everybody that I work with because my day does not look the same each and every time I walk in there, which is dope.
No, and that's like, I mean,
obviously, will you consider yourself like self-employed, or is that how you...
So I don't consider myself self-employed only because like I am with a facility that obviously has, again, given me a lot over the years and has honestly allowed me to kind of to do my own thing, obviously under the respect and principles of what it really means to like work with someone in the private sector in comparison to like collegiate or anything like that. They've allowed me to kind of evolve over the years, and I think for me, like, again, that sense of like complacency, I've always been like, yeah, proud of things that I've done and stuff like that. I've never been satisfied. I've always tried to look back on year to year and be like, have I evolved? And I'm not just talking financially, I'm not just talking position wise, like, have I evolved in how I think and how I approach things and how I approach new clients and how I continue to approach existing clients that I have, and apply it to like my own life. Because at the end of the day, like, as much as I love working with a lot of, you know, different people and stuff like that, I still have to be able to look after myself at the end of the day and apply those same things. So it's almost like they hold me accountable just as much as I hold them accountable. And I think for Drive, like, they always want to make sure, especially from a quality standpoint, that that's being met and that the experience is being met no matter what, bro. Like, for me, like, training with someone for 1 hour is just not like, oh, we're just going to get a good sweat or, you know, whatever's on the sheet for the day, we're just going to go do. Like, no, sometimes, like, I have to change things on the fly. Sometimes we don't get to the workout at all. And some people just want to talk and have like a real conversation. Maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe they're having a really good day. It doesn't really matter. I think a lot of the times, like, the reason why I've been able to do at least really well early on is because, like, yes, I'm really detailed and organized about how I go about my business, but I'm also, like, I'm not super hard about it. Right. Like, if we can't get to something one day because I see something early on or whatever, then, like, I'm going to address that. Or someone's like, I can tell someone's in a bad mood or something like that. I'm just going to pause the workout altogether and be like, let's just sit down. Let's go for a walk for like 5 minutes and let it air out. Yeah. Because I found that for a lot of people, you know, it's more than just working out. It's like, it's their hour of their time. And for a lot of people, again, they're coming into the gym for a reason. And 90% of the time, it's a confidence with any sort of part of themselves, whether it's strength-wise, just like how they look visually, how they feel like deep down inside. I think that all kind of correlates into one. And I think that's why, you know, if you look at the most successful people in the world, like, they're also 99% of the time the healthiest people, and they're probably taking care of themselves from, like, at least from a fitness standpoint. Maybe not so much about some of the other things on the back end, like sleep and like stuff like that, because I've won one thing for damn sure, like, getting up early, there's like no other option but doing that, because I've realized like just how much I throw on my plate that maybe there's not enough time in a day. And I know I have to get better at that and stuff like that, but at least the most successful people that I've come across early on, they're up before anybody else. Yeah. They're already like 3 steps ahead of where the average person is, and that's why they're in the position that they're in. And that's another thing I realized early on. It's like, if you want it, dude, like, you gotta go get it. And the people that may seem like they have it all figured out, like they're living good or whatnot, like, I take, like, you know, like your stepdad, for example. Like, when I met that dude for the first time, like, you know, I think a lot of what I've been able to embellish from him is like, it's a constant responsibility for those that you work with and within yourself, that things have to get done regardless of how you feel on a given day. Like, no matter what he's got going on, or what parties or what like events or like what traveling that you guys have going on, or whatever the case may be, he's still on his shit. And it's a disciplinary aspect. Yeah. And for a lot of like my business owners that I work with, it's discipline, and holding yourself to like knowing that you're not going to be able to do it after you're not going to find any time to do it. Like, you have to get things done even if it's the worst day ever. And that's why I pay a lot of respect to him. That's why, like, we even, you know, continue to work with each other like to this day, because he, again, regardless of a client, he is a good friend of mine, and he's someone that I look up to as a role model just from that aspect, because it's, again, starting from the ground up, being similar to our age and having to work his way up to where he's at now. And it takes time.
And someone like him too, like, you know, he's taught me a lot, and one of those things is consistency. Like, I don't know if you saw one of the videos, and I brought this up in another podcast I did. It was about like pivoting and adapting. But one of the things that I say in there is, regardless of like what the job is, the job doesn't care about how you woke up. The job doesn't care about how you feel that day. Regardless of what your mental, physical state is.
Yeah.
I mean, I even go so far as to say, like, when I'm sick, like physically sick, the same expectation is there. The expectation doesn't change. Now, whether or not you can fulfill that, that's a different story. But, you even said, like, a lot of these guys, they're, waking up early. Some people stay up late. Like, I'm up till 12, 1 in the morning. Mm-hmm. And the reality is what I've always kind of based my schedule on is, like, I work 18 hours a day. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, I include the gym in that because
it's work, bro.
It's work.
It's still work.
It's not me sitting on my ass watching TV.
No.
18 hours a day. And the reality is that's 2.5 of the average person's day. Yeah. Some people only do really 6 hours of productive work every day and fuck off for the rest.
Maybe even less than that.
Maybe even less, but I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. So to your one day, I have 3. And so I look at it as capitalizing on your average person, because if you want to be above average, you just need to do above average tasks or complete the regular tasks at an above average speed. So it's just somehow finding that angle of consistency, discipline, outworking people. I put, like, at least the gym, if I'm going to pick a meeting or the gym, I'm picking the gym. Because for me, the gym's always been not only, like you said, a lot of these people go to the gym and it's more than just a workout for them. Like, it's their hour of their day. And I look at it the same way. Like, it's an hour or two, really 2 hours that I just get to unplug. And I get to, obviously clear the mind. That's a big part of just the way the endorphins work. But really, too, like, just setting yourself up physically, I think, is a domino effect in every other facet of your life. And my goal is really to be able to make my first impression when I walk into any room, without even speaking a word, the way that you physically look and the way you carry yourself, because of how you physically look, is the first impression. I don't care what people say about, the first thing that you say to somebody is your first impression. No. The first impression is the first time somebody locks eyes with you and they look at you and they are either intimidated or they respect you or they don't respect you at all and they're like judging you, like, oh, this dude's out of shape. There's clearly no discipline to them. You know what I mean? It shows discipline. The gym shows discipline.
Yeah, I think especially, like, over the years, and again, like, even early on, going back to, like, high school and whatnot, like, I'll be the first one to admit, like, I had some real issues when it comes to, like, just how I was presenting myself physically and stuff like that. Just honestly really caring about, like, what people thought, and, like, hearing positive affirmations about it and shit like that, like, really, like, boosted my ego up and made me feel good. And that's kind of was, like, a motivating factor to, like, going, obviously, in the first place, especially, like, early on in high school, trying to get girls or whatever the case may be. As I've gotten older, I think one of the biggest things I've started to realize, even more so now, and I think a lot of, like, younger guys, we don't really, obviously mental health is not one of those things that's really, like, harped upon. And I think for me now, like, kind of similar to you, that it's that 1 or 2 hours where, like, you kind of just get to block everything out. And I be, like, sometimes I'll just, like, I'll put my headphones in, but I won't put music on. It's kind of like block out outside noise, and sometimes I'll think, even just if it's for the first 30 minutes of the workout, just, like, kind of debrief. I've been a big fan of waking up at, like, 3:45, 4, and having the gym be the first thing I'm doing in my day. I've been doing it for, like, the last probably 2-3 weeks now, just trying to play around with it. And again, when I first started at Drive, I was not an early morning guy.
Yeah.
Like, seeing it's still dark out and seeing that alarm go off, like, that inner bitch comes out, and it still does for me to this day. But I think I get so worked up now that, like, I just know I'm not gonna be able to get it done in a day from an energy standpoint. I'm just like, and they always say, like, your first few hours a day, like, you're most productive. And I always found that, like, regardless of maybe how my energy is for, like, the morning and stuff like that, I'm still, like, the most focused on, like, what I gotta get done on like, that given workout. Even if it's 45 minutes, it's still early as hell. No one's going to bother me. I'm able to, like, kind of get in there, get my shit done. And one of the biggest things one of my coaches always used to tell me, or I was one of my master's professors, they always used to say, if you can't do it, don't coach it. So I've been a firm believer that, like, I have to, if I'm, like, making people do certain movement progressions, especially athletes and doing certain things and whatnot, like, I got to be able to back my shit up. Like, I got to be able to, like, do the same things at a high level so that like, it all kind of ties in, and they're saying that like, oh, like he actually means what he's talking about. He's not just making people do it just to do it. Because it's really easy to do that. It's really easy to get caught up in the fitness space, especially nowadays, how it's become so popular. I see a lot of shit online with just like, whether it's trainers or whether just like fitness influencers and whatnot that really like have no idea what they're talking about, but they put themselves out there so well and their confidence is so high that people actually believe it and they're able to like dial in on that.
Well, even today, I was listening to a Hermosi podcast. And
I was going to bring that up, dude.
Yeah, I was listening to one of his podcasts today, and he was talking about how, like, I forget, he was referring to, like, one investor. I don't even know if it's a real investor anybody knows, but he was comparing it to, like, he was really talking about why he never wanted to get into the content space and realized he had to. And he's like, the first question people ask for somebody that they don't know is, why should I listen to you? Why should I believe what you're saying? Versus if Warren Buffett came on with an iPhone 4 type quality of video and audio and said, buy this stock, you're going to listen to him. You might not listen to the person who has this kind of setup with the best audio, who doesn't know what they're talking about, or may know, but you don't know that they know. And so going on your point where you're like, I got to back my shit up, what it comes down to is like really just what you know and what kind of presence you make and being able to back it up like Buffett can. And so you're going to invest in a stock that Buffett suggests, whether he could be on Kick, texting it on Kick, hey, buy this stock. It doesn't matter where he is or how he gets it out there. It's the reality is he over the years has backed his shit up.
Like being at a community like Drive, everybody talks, everybody's super, well connected in regards to what everybody's doing and whatnot, especially being in front of people every day, whether it's 10 people, whether it's a group of 4, whether it's 35 at once. Like you're again putting on not necessarily a show, you're putting on you're giving them an experience that is supplemented through a workout. So for me, like I'm trying to put myself out there just by my personality and stuff like that, but I'm also like doing it with a purpose and doing it with intent of like what has to get done on that given day and putting my own spin on it. And I think one of the biggest things that, my mom always used to tell me growing up was like, if you do the best, you'll be the best. And I know it's like a kind of like a generic, like corny little like quirk or whatever, like saying or whatnot. But I always used to believe that. Like I was never the most skilled guy. I was never like the face of anything. I was never really acknowledged for a lot, but I always put like my best foot forward.
Yeah.
I always gave it 120%, I mean 110, and I always did more because I knew I had no way else of getting to there. Like I had no, not even resources. I had nothing to fall back on.
Right.
So for me, it was like when you apply pressure, I think, I put pressure on myself every day, not necessarily negative pressure, but pressure holding myself to a very high standard, kind of similar to you.
Which is
like being able to know that you got to put your best foot out there every day. Again, regardless of how you're feeling, like you never know how that's gonna impact someone, how that's gonna turn someone's day around. And I've, maybe over my time, there's been days where like, I've really maybe didn't want to train, or maybe I was having a bad day at home or something like that. And I've become a really good actor, dude. Like I've become a really good, and it was funny that you kind of brought that up earlier because, there are times where, again, man, like I'm just not feeling it or whatever, but you can't let someone who's paying X do that. Right. Or you can't show them that, because then they're going to be like, what the hell? And they're going to end up dropping you. And that's always my biggest fear, is having someone not be able to work with me because of a quality or an effort standpoint. Effort being the most important thing. Like, regardless how many hours of sleep I get the night before, no matter how much is on my plate, like, if you see me at 6 a.m., I'm probably going to look the same at 6 p.m. Right. Maybe my face will change a little bit. Maybe the eyes will drop a little bit, but like, I'm still putting in as much as I can. And yeah, maybe when I go home, like I'm absolutely smoked or whatever, but that's also why like I've taken a little bit of my focus, not necessarily away from training, but I've allowed myself to branch off and start doing other things to not let my whole world be training. And I remember going out to a certification course in Miami at this place called DBC. It's dumbbells, barbells, cables. This guy named David Alexander and Donnie Raymond. Donnie Raymond was a biomedical engineer, and David Alexander has been, a really prominent trainer in the space for over 20 plus years. He's worked with athletes like LeBron James, Dwayne Wade. I mean, dude, during our seminar, Chris Paul walked in. So, like, my jaw dropped, dude, because, like, that was, like, an icon for me growing up. Like, and I wasn't that, definitely wasn't that good at basketball or anything like that, but I obviously, like, I appreciate sports so much. I was, constantly, anything I can, anything that with a ball or anything, like, on a board, like, my parents were making us do. So, for me, I always appreciated, like, the work ethic of, like, a really successful, like, high athlete. And having him walk in and really go into depth about, like, quality assurance and, like, I mean, dude, he had signed like $100+ million deal at 36 years old, and he was really saying how, like, doing things the right way and paying close attention to little details, especially from a biomechanics standpoint, because biomechanics is like the study of human movement, like how we, our 7 motor programs, which is push, pull, squat, lunge, bend, twisting, and gait, which is like how our walk cycle is. Like, there's little things that we are doing, like, every single day that maybe we're not realizing that have a detriment on those, like, motor programs. And that's why you see a lot of these athletes with, like, a lot of these non-contact injuries and stuff like that, because they're not maybe addressing those little things. And I think that one of the biggest things they taught us early on during that course was, like, it's really easy to get caught up in the smoke and, like, the who is and ahs of, like, especially what's going on in the fitness space and trying to make it your own and trying to do, like, just going back to the basics. Like, sticking with the basics and, like, having to master the basics is something where even for my own self, like, I'm still trying to apply those principles into everything that I'm doing, like, sticking with the basics because, and, like, but at the same time, like, putting my own little spin on what the basics means for me. And I think for me, especially, like, being in the training space, I've always wanted the workouts to be fun, but I've always wanted them to be an intent and it's specific for a specific person. So kind of tying that all in, I think most importantly, not being so worried about what everybody else is doing and really just kind of honing on your things and what's going to make you special, what's going to make you different is really allowed me to kind of, like, slow things down, like, in my head and not be so caught up in, like, what everybody else is going to think. Even when I put content out, like, fitness wise, like, sometimes I'll worry about, like, oh, what's so-and-so going to say or what's so-and-so going to think. It doesn't matter as long as, like, I'm putting my best foot forward and, like, that quality is being there, then I'm good.
Yeah, I mean, there's, like, well, when you're putting content out, there's a goal to be met, and that's just exposure. And so if somebody's going to start chirping you for exposure, it's like, well, the reality is, like, the basics you try your best to take care of. You try and fix these little details, but there's, like, a point in time where the perfection gets way out of hand and you're veering away from the basics. You're trying to do these fancy edits or whatever, when in reality the video quality itself might suck. And I'm just talking content because you just brought it up.
I think one of the things, like, especially David was talking about, like, kind of correlating the basics into, like, your own personal life. So, like, one of the biggest things, like, the 4, like, principles that he really, like, was making sure of was, like, your family, your friends, your work, and your hobbies.
Yeah.
And when he said that one, I was like, hobbies, like, I mean, like, yeah, like, outside of fitness, I was really trying to think about, like, what hobbies that, like, I really have. And I think for me, like, that's why DJing for me has become something that maybe started off as a hobby, but I also believe, like, hobbies hold you accountable to constantly getting better at it.
Right.
And it's not going to come, like, overnight. I remember, like, 3-4 years ago when I bought my first set of decks, I was just, like, messing around in my kitchen with my boys and, like, never would have thought in a million years that, like, actually putting some real time and some effort into, like, learning, like, the skills and, like, stuff like that. And also seeing a lot of, like, my friends are, like, role models, especially growing up in Jersey, how they were doing it and stuff like that. And I think for me now, like, putting a good amount of attention into it has allowed things to kind of, like, catapult in that where I can just actually start marking myself into doing live events and working with different clients and, like, actually like making money doing it, which is like I never thought in a million years that like having a hobby where you can actually make money off of it would be something that's like an actual possibility. But I think that's important, man. Like we gotta have, you know, certain, like I know some people that are just like work, gym, home, that's it. And I'm like,
It's me.
that's what's all like. I think for you, man, like I think but that's how it's supposed to be early on. For me, like when I was in like from like 20 to 23, it was just like workout, train. Just learning how to like, especially like getting my master's at Merrimack right after, like that was the most beneficial year of my life because I had no football. It was just school. So for me, like I could really just like dive into it for like a whole year. And like, again, man, that year set me up so much for like what I'm doing now. And like, I'm super grateful that I actually like went back and did it immediately after, because I know damn well if I did not go for my master's right after I graduated, I was definitely not going back. School was always one of those things for me where I found it, a lot of it was like busy work. Like I could do it, and I was always sufficient in school. Like I graduated my master's with like a 3.7. Like I graduated Merrimack with like a 3.6.
That's really good, yeah.
But like for me, it comes down to an effort thing. It was putting effort into like, all right, let's study a little bit. Putting effort into like actually getting assignments in on time and making sure like those are getting done. And for me, that's all it was. Like I wasn't really like grasping a whole lot, but I was just like really good at like having a good schedule and like getting shit done, because like football was like a full-time job. Like you had to find time to be able to get everything done you need to get done, and have someone with a social life too. I mean, I had a lot of fun at Merrimack, man. Yeah. It was an absolute blast. Maybe I had a little too much fun, but I look back on it now. And I could go back and change anything. Nah, like I hate when people like sometimes ask me, like, you can go back in time and like change a few things. Like, there's some things you would do. I mean, like, yeah, but like I think the decisions that I've been able to make have like brought me like to this point now.
Right.
And I don't want to like picture life outside of like what it is now. So I'm super grateful that like even some of the mistakes I made early on, or some of like the setbacks I have and stuff like that, have brought me to a point where I have a little bit more firm understanding about like what I want to do for the future. Right. And I think that we need to be able to make the mistakes early on. We need to be like really devoted to our shit. So I give you a lot of props, man, because there's not a lot of kids your age that like have that kind of mindset where it's like, I know I have to bust my ass right now. I know I have to work, but you also have like different goals and intentions in mind. And I've always been the type of person that like I have to write my shit down. Like I write goals down every year of like big, I'm talking like big ones too, like things I really, really want to get done that I feel like maybe be a little bit out of reach, but I found the ones that like are either too close to me or whatever, like I don't get much satisfaction out of getting them done. Right. Like I have to challenge myself in some way.
My bedroom, I got a whiteboard that's like pretty much every day I wake up, it's like facing me. It's facing the door right when I walk in. Wrote them on November 25th, 22. And I wrote at the bottom the end goal, which is the November 25th, 23. So it's coming up in a few months. 15 annual goals. And they were big goals. They were like, you know, I think one of them was like $10,000 a month, first $10,000 a month. One of them was like to have, I forget, a certain chunk of money liquid. Like a chunk of money that like I never, when writing these goals, I thought 90% of them I was going to get close to and I'd be okay with that. We're in July and I've hit 12 out of 15 already. And so writing them down, having them like in front of you all the time.
I tell all my younger guys that. I'm like, you have to, like, I used to put that shit like on like a post-it note, like on like my mirror or like next to my bed, or even have like that shit screenshotted like in my phone. I think one thing, shout out my boy George Smith over at UPenn basketball. Me and him were like, he was one of my first clients ever. We were really close and we shoot the shit all the time. And one of the biggest things that me and him have both evolved over the years, whether it's me with training or him just being able to like excel. You know, when I first met him, he was at Brooks. Like he wasn't, you know, he was a good player, but I didn't really know much about him. And then he goes off to UPenn and now he's killing it. And one of the biggest things I always tell him, man, I'm like, we've done some good things, bro. Like, you haven't done shit yet. Yeah. And it literally, he showed me like the day before he left, like this past, like a few months ago before he went, like he has an internship there in Philly all summer. He literally has it on his phone. Like, you haven't done shit yet. And it's like little moments like that, bro, for me, that like, that's why I do what I do in the first place. Is because like I have a kid same age as you, bro, who, you know, has put themselves in a very successful position. You've already had a great amount of success at a really young age. And I think like it's a mindset shit you have to have, and realizing like, we haven't done anything yet, dude.
Well, that's the funny part. It's like a lot of people, like, we have non-satisfaction brains. Like, that's just probably the way you work as well. Like, never satisfied, and as frustrating as it is, it's the only thing that keeps you going. And so I kind of laugh because I see a therapist here and there. Like, I talk to my therapist. I think it's great.
Twice a week, once every 2 weeks.
I'm about like once a month whenever if I can. But one of the things she always tells me is like, you know, it's not a bad thing to not be satisfied, but it's bad when you never ever reflect on where you were a year ago and put yourself in your year ago shoes.
Dude, you know what I mean? I told the same thing.
Because it's so important. If you think, like, the only reason you should do that is not to be satisfied, because that's dangerous to become satisfied, but to know that in that year's period you had that much success, to give you that kick in the ass, like, listen, us saying we're nowhere near where we're supposed to be, that's okay to say, because we will be. And looking at it from a year ago to now, this will happen again.
How do you go about measuring success for yourself? Are you like, I feel like you're a big, and like, again, take this in the right way, I feel like you're a big analytics and statistics guy.
Yeah.
Like, you're super dialed in on that. Do you correlate that with like how you really intrusively feel inside, in terms of like, damn, like a year ago compared to now, just based off this, I'm successful? Or I'm like, no, like I know mentally, like, I've evolved in the way I'm thinking and the way I'm going about my shit. There's anything else.
Because I don't think, like, I think I look at money as simply just like the result of your work, but not even like the result. It's more like it just confirms that you've won at whatever it is. So like, if you want to hit $100,000 in a year and you make that $100,000, it's not that you, or at least for me, it's not necessarily that I'm like, oh, I get $100,000 this year, so I can go buy a boat. Or
it's like knowing that you have the ability to do it.
Knowing that I have, and the money coming in is sort of just a confirmation that I reached that goal. But for me, I look at everything. I don't look at the income I make now and say, oh, my life's so much better because I make X versus what I did back a year ago. What I look at is, I think about this problem. Like, one of the biggest things that I've paid attention to this whole year is stoicism. Like, trying not to be reactive in any situation.
Yeah.
Keeping my shit together as best as I can. And there have been a lot of situations where a year ago I would have like freaked out, popped my top off, and I become a solution-driven person. So I think like one of the most important things that I look at that I've grown from in the past year is I went from being reactive and non-productive when problems occurred to being one of the best problem solvers. And I don't even say this to like gas myself up, but I just watch everybody else and how they go about problems that occur in the moment. And I do look at myself as one of the best problem solvers I know, because I've worked on, like I said, the stoicism of it. Like, no need to get out of hand. The first thing that should happen whatever problem occurs is, what's the solution? Where do I go from here? Then react to it. And that's been like the biggest mindset shift, is really what it comes down to is focus. Focus on the solution and the goal at hand, the task at hand. And when your focus is always on the solution and not the problem, you muscle through and you power through everything.
Yeah, I think for me too, like, especially over the course of this past year, and me being very similar in regards to this, being reactive when like things just were going wrong and like things just weren't going my way. And I've also like realized too, like, a lot of the times, like, I set myself up for that. Yeah. Or like I already knew that mistake was going to be a possibility, and I just didn't want it to happen. And when it happened, I'm like, God damn it. You know what I mean? Like, why can't I just get it right? And honestly, like, a lot of like my negative energy, when something wrong happens, it will portray to everything in my life. And I think, kind of similar to you, I've allowed myself now more than ever, if something goes wrong, maybe I'll have a little moment, but it's more like it's 5 minutes and not like the whole day.
Yeah.
Like, I got people counting on me. I got, things that I know that, like, I need to get done in a given day. I can't let one little problem, one little thing affect my whole MO and, like, kind of, like, my homeostasis, you know what I mean? Like, I've always been kind of that reactive kid. Like, I have ADHD, and, like, I think that's one of the things, like, I've worked on with my therapist is just being able to accept that, not everybody's perfect, and that it's okay to, like, not be okay. Because, again, man, I was always the type of kid that, like, was always just trying to deal with things on my own, or always just trying to bottle it up because I had football to just let it all out. And then after football, I'd be fine. But when I didn't have that anymore, and I would start pushing it more in the gym, and, like, that wasn't doing it. It was like, God damn, like, what is the problem? Like, I'm putting myself in positions to, like, feel better, but I'm not feeling better. And it's mainly because of my inability to, like, handle high stress situations and just know that it's not the end of the world, and that just because maybe outcomes or certain things are not happening right now, it doesn't mean they're not going to happen in the future. Just based on, like, who I am and, like, what I believe in and, like, knowing where I want to go. I always used to look at those things and be like, oh, there it is. I'm done. Like, things are over, like, whatever. Nah, it's a part of, like, the process. It's a part of, like, why, like, we do what we do in the first place, is because, like, I want to get, like, kicked in the balls every now and then for, maybe a program not going right or something in my personal life not going right or whatever, and, like, realizing, like, why. Right. Like, where did I go wrong? And I think, like, again, having things, I have a journal now, like, I'll write in it and stuff like that, and, like, I think for me, like, kind of reflecting, going back on some of those thoughts, I realized, like, hey, where did a lot of those things come from? Where did a lot of those things stem? And I'm super grateful now that, like, yeah, I still, I'm emotionally invested, but I'm not as emotionally invested, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, well, you just like detach yourself because, like one of the things. So I was just talking to a psych major. I had a podcast with a psych major, and we were talking about the concept of radical accountability. I don't know if you've ever heard of it put like that.
Not in that sense. Just elaborate a little more.
So radical accountability is essentially saying that every single win and every single loss in your life that you're majorly affected by, or from a very minor outsider standpoint you're affected by it, somehow, some way you played a part in that. So whether or not it's good or bad. So being able to obviously blame every single win that you have on something that you did, and then obviously giving credit where credit's due alongside that, and also on the same token being able to reflect back on a situation where something went poorly. And I gave this example. So I was at my beach house a few weeks ago, and I had my laptops, I had like 2 Macs and an iPad in just like a tote bag. And I had, like, hoodies over it. And I left it in my car all weekend. And end of the weekend, I'm cleaning out the car, getting ready to leave, and I see, like, a Truly can in that bag. And I was like, oh, whatever, it's closed. But I picked it up, it was punctured. And it had been pissing on both my laptops and my iPad all weekend. And so my first thought is, who the hell put a punctured Truly can in my car in this bag, even though they didn't know there were laptops in it? Like, why the hell did somebody put
that happen in the first place? Yeah.
Why would somebody be so stupid? And then on the way back, I'm driving off the beach.
You're thinking, why the fuck did I leave that in my bag?
Exactly.
Why did I leave that shit in my car?
That's what I said. In my head, on the way, I go, you know what? It's a non-issue whether or not somebody was stupid enough to put a Truly can in there or not. The reality is, it could have all been avoided if I had just taken my bag out of the car.
That's like my everyday life.
Well, it's stupid shit, you know what I mean? It's stupid shit all the time. But the idea is just, like, the more and more that you don't beat yourself up.
The more you think that way, of being like, damn, like, how can I be such an idiot? Like, it's not necessarily that, like, even, like, younger guys I told, whether, like, they don't have good workouts or, like, their game sucked or whatever, like, I'm letting them know, I'm like, dude, you make the mistake so that you don't make it again, hopefully.
Right.
Like, I think my biggest thing now is, like, learning from my mistakes. So there was times where, like, I would make a mistake. I'm like, all right, like, yeah, I won't make it again, whatever. And just, when you don't, like, actually thinking about, like, all right, this happened for a reason. you have to like see it as a sign, like you have to obey by that now. And if you don't think that way, it's just gonna keep happening.
Yeah, sometimes you need to be like heavily affected in order to learn from something. So I think too, like when bad shit happens, like for instance, a couple last summer, I have this story too. So my car shit the bed on me, and there was nothing I could have done about that. So my car shit the bed. I was like, all right, well, I get a truck, so I'm gonna ride the truck out. So I take the truck, 2 weeks. This was when I was buying my house, my duplex in Derry. So I'm down at the beach. We're leaving. I'm back in the boats into one of our little like storage yards that we have, and I start turning the wheel on like a berm, and my lower ball joint snaps. My whole entire wheel assembly flattens out, and so I'm sitting there and I'm just going, all right. So I'm getting out of the truck. And honestly, this is the first time that I ever really succeeded with the stoicism. I just got out of the truck, walked, just looked at it. It was very quiet, very calm. But I was like, shit, this is 2 cars in 2 weeks. Now I'm out. I had the benefit of having a second car. Now I'm out. Then, 5 minutes later, I get an email from the agent. Your offer was accepted. And when you get an offer accepted, you can't go pull credit. So I couldn't go buy a new car. So now I had 2 cars shit the bed on me. I had to piss out money for this property, and I couldn't go buy a new car for another 2 months until I closed. And so, like, understanding that something like that I couldn't have controlled, yet the little bit of control I had, I think one of the things that frustrates most people when bad shit happens is their lack of control. So that's why I like the radical accountability, because I like being able to find, okay, what could I have controlled? Where in this situation
did I go wrong?
So that I know, like, listen, I'm not like frantic now. There is something that I can grasp, I can control. There's not chaos. And so what I could have controlled is I could have just brought it to the shop instead of doing all the suspension on my own on that truck. Yeah. I could have brought it to the shop, paid the extra money.
This dude was trying to be handy-manny over here.
Yeah, so exactly. And so look what happened.
Goes back to that point of like, shit, man, I think a lot of my issues is, like, I'll try and do things on my own that I know I'm, like, someone else should probably do better at it. But I'm like, you know, like, save anybody else a hassle. Let me give it a go.
Yeah.
And I've learned now, I think more than ever, to, like, ask for help.
Yeah. Put the ego aside.
Dude, I was like, yeah, man, for a long time, it was like early high school, even, like, early college, it was very, like, ego-driven based as, like, why I was doing the things that I was doing. And it got me nowhere. It got me nowhere, like, internally. And, like, yeah, like, football it was great. I played a lot of games there and, like, had, again, a lot of fun and stuff like that. But, like, once that was all said and done, it was like, all right, what's next, homie? Right. And I was just kind of, like, stuck with, like, that revolving cycle of, like, doing things but, like, not really gaining much out of it from, like, mentally. And I think it took, like, those hard times, especially, like, early on in my training career where, like, I had no clients, where I was just getting tossed. And my schedule was so random, and I was like, but then I look back on times where I was, like, waiting tables and, like, working at a golf course when I was in college. And I remember I used to, like, sit there on breaks and be like, you know what? One day I'm going to get paid to train people in DJ, and it's going to be hilarious when it's all said and done. And I remember, like Thursday night, like, of this past week, like, I had a whole day of training, and then I got to go play at Revere Beach and DJ all weekend. And I remember, like, driving home and just being like, dude, like, you said what you wanted to do. Like, you did what you wanted to, like accomplish at the end of the day. And I think, like, even, like, through those hard times, or even, like, still how times are hard now, like, I look back on the times that are harder. I look back on times where I wish I got to this point. And why would I sit there now just because things are a little bit tougher? Like, I'm grateful, bro. I'm grateful I get to do the things that I love to do every day. Not a lot of kids get to say that, like, especially our age, that they get to do what they want to do. A lot of them are stuck working a job that is either they're starting off, or maybe they don't even know what they want to do.
Or they know they're going to be married to this whatever that they hate for the next 40 years.
Yeah, man. And, like, I love my pops to death, but I think growing up and seeing him work, like, a really high stress labor job, and, like, seeing how much that put on his body, and, like, just his overall demeanor, man, like, I told myself, like, I never want to, like, feel that way. And again, love my dad more than anything. I respect him more than anything. He's like, he's a role model. He's my best friend. But I think in regards to, like, that avenue, I always told myself, like, I'm doing these things now. Like, I'm going to college and I'm doing these things now because I never, and I know he wanted it for me too. Mm-hmm. He always told me, he's like, I never want you to be in, like, my position. I never want you to, like, not feel like you can accomplish anything if you put your mind to it. So that's another driving force for me, man, is, like, seeing how as time has evolved and, like, I've worked the shittiest jobs, I bust tables, I've done it all, like, you name it. And being in a position now, even still being younger, but making the right steps and the right connections into doing what I still love to do at the end of the day, regardless of how much work or effort or hours I put into it, I still love it, man. Like, I love being able to put a smile on someone's face every day. I love being able to, like, help someone, like, with their goals, and I love being able to, like, be an outsource of, like, positivity, even when, like, I may not be feeling it, right? I know just getting other people to feel that sense of way, that, like, that's going to bring me back up at the end of the day. Right. And I think that's, like, why I work my ass off the way that I do. Kind of, like, similar to you, man. Like, we talked about it early on. Like, I work, like, 12 to 16 hour days. I've done 18-hour days where, obviously, like, in the heat of it, being able to, like, not get a lot of sleep, and maybe there's a lot of stress involved or some anxiety involved with it and stuff like that. I've learned to be able to, like, channel that and go. Because, again, like, I was once in a position where I actually hated doing what I had to do to make money, bro. It's so different.
Well, you were paying your dues at that point. And
I was paying my dues, but I was also, like, learning the idea of, like, having to outwork people to get where I want to be. And I think going back to that that Hormozy quote, what I'm going to say right now. It's like, I don't want to, like, I'm probably going to get it wrong, but I think one of the biggest things he talks about is, like, you don't need to yell out affirmations in the mirror to tell you that you're good at something or that you're right. You need a stockpile of things that you've already done to back your shit up, outwork your self-doubt.
Yeah.
And for me, man, like, my whole life has been revolved around outworking the doubt I had in my head that I couldn't get it done. Like, when I had the goal of mine when I was, like, 14, I wanted to go be a D1 football player. Like, I remember, like, just like that, even like that thought, maybe, like, surprised or, like, shocked others, and maybe others thought, like, oh, like, there's no fucking way. And, like, I'm okay. Like, I was, again, it came down to, like, having that chip on your shoulder of, like, being able to get it done. And then, like, but then, like, once you get it done, it's like, there's two ways you can go. You can either be really stoked about it or be like, what's next? And for me, man, like, I have to do a better job at, like, enjoying those moments. I got to stop thinking so much about what's next, because for me, man, especially when it comes to, like, going back to measuring success, I measure success by experience. Experiences that I've been able to have over the last few years, regardless of what my bank account looks like, being able to have made the connections I made to the experiences that I've had, whether it's the workshops that I've, was able to do down in Miami. I've met some great friends doing that. Shout out my boy Brian Escobar, who's down in Miami, lives down in South Beach, and he's a fitness trainer as well. And, one of the craziest things is, like, you never know who you're going to meet, and just off one weekend. And, I know that's going to be one of my boys for life, dude. Like, we're going to be super connected. And I'm just using him as one example because it's, like, putting yourself out there in maybe uncomfortable situations, it goes such a long way. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, dude, when I first started training, like, I think I knew what I was doing. Hell no. But I knew how to talk to people. I knew how to be myself. I knew how to bring energy. And I knew I was going to learn as I went by those who were better than me.
Right.
I'm constantly trying to surround myself with guys and girls that are better than me, like what I'm doing. So that way, like, I'm adding tools to my toolbox and I'm sharpening up the ones I have.
Well, that was me for the for the networking events.
Yeah.
I go to all these like investor meetups and investor networking events, and I literally went 2 months later. That's when I bought my property. It was that quick. It was like putting myself around people who, because the best part about the people who are so far ahead of you, who you network with and you look up to and whatever you surround yourself with, is that they also make the goal that seems so overwhelming for you look so easy. That's one of the best parts. It helps.
Making it look, that's a good point, man. Making it look easy. Because it's definitely not, dude.
No, but it's scary to do it. So it's like when you see these people who you look up to, who you know well enough to know in that conversation, you learn enough from them to know, like, they're not smarter than me, really. They're not better.
No, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they're just,
but how
they took the leap that I'm trying to take now. And that's why, I think that the most beneficial part about putting yourself in those situations, those uncomfortable situations, especially with people who are better than you, is that really just puts into perspective how much of a pussy you are. Like, that's what happened
honestly.
with me.
Yeah, and it's like overthinking it.
Yeah.
Because like for me, like whether it was the workshops that I did or just like going to DJ in front of a crowd for the first time, like, or just in front of people, like in general, like obviously I started off just like messing around in like my bedroom, like my kitchen with like some of my homies and stuff. And like for me, like I was like, nah, man, like I want more than this. Like I know that I can, if I really like dial in on this, like constantly try to work at it each and every day, or at least trying to find as much time as I can in my week to like work on it, it's going to constantly get better the more I start putting myself in those type of situations. So like I'll go back to like this past March, I did the Southie Boston Parade. I DJ'd the whole thing with Move Studio. Shout out Move Studios and my boy Drew over there. This dude had no idea who I was. I had one of my friends send me a DM of like an Instagram story that they were looking for like a DJ for like the parade. And if you know, if you're from Boston and like you know like the Southie Parade, it was insane. This was my first one. I knew nothing about it. I've only lived up here for a few years. I never went during that time because we were obviously in spring ball. I never had a chance to really go out there and like celebrate St. Patty's Day. But yeah, I sent a message to this dude out of a whim. He gives me a call like 30 minutes later. He's like, listen, man, like we're not gonna be able to pay you, but like we're gonna like be able to connect you and like set you up and like you're gonna have a blast. I'm like, dude, I'm not even worried about money right now. Like I just want to put myself out there and go and like see if I can do it. And I remember, bro, like waking up that morning like super early, like trying to prep my shit and being so scared because that was like really the first time I was putting myself out in front of like a bunch of people. And there was a lot of like famous Boston influencers on like that truck and stuff like that. And I remember like as things were going and as things were starting to like flow and everybody was like really having fun with it, I would like look up for 1 second and you just see like hundreds and thousands of people down in front of the truck. And I literally had like one of those like pinch me moments of like, holy shit, I can do this. Like I know I can. And it just took that one little like, don't be a pussy right now moment for me to be like, you know what? I can do this shit. I have to start practicing more. I think from that moment on, like ever since that parade and like the success that came about from that, and just like the things that I've learned even just through that experience alone, like I'm super grateful for it now because I know that's what catapulted me into like really diving into it a lot into this summer and actually like claiming a residency at a bar, local in town and starting to
I wanted Par 28, right?
Yeah, dude. Shout out my boy Jim, man, because like I remember going up to that dude in the gym because he was a member. And I remember like obviously over the like we kind of got to know each other over the last few years and like, between like, him having a baby and him actually opening up the old drive, which was at the old Coke plant, into like him turning into this. I'm like, hey man, like I'm gonna kind of throw something out of a whim and like, maybe you can tell me to F off or you can be like, all right, I'm interested. But like, I don't think anybody in Salem, New Hampshire has any sort of like live music besides like bands or self playing. I'm like, you guys have a dope vibe in here. Like you have an amazing bar, like different things you guys are offering, from like the golf simulators and the axe throwing and shit. Like, let me come play like 2 weekends free. And I guarantee I can get people in here, and like the whole vibe can just be different. And it's something that you can look forward to every Friday, especially going into like the fall and winter months.
Which we need that in Salem. Like,
honestly, like, especially being from Jersey, and like, I think like the nightlife culture in Jersey, like there's a lot of like smaller bars and stuff like that, but like, man, they are packed like wall to wall. And it's just like, there's always live DJs. A lot of my boys from Jersey's like are DJs, and like I always used to look up to them and be like, damn, they're getting this place cranking right now. Like, I want to like be that dude. You know what I mean? And I think for me, like, I just always love energy. I always loved like having fun and like being with my friends and just being able to like go for a few hours and like just say fuck it, like go have fun. Like, that's always been DJing for me. It's just been fun, and and music has always been that way for me. It's always been fun. It's always like brought me closer to people. It's always brought me like together. And like, having moved up here and that not be a thing, I was like, no, I'm not just gonna go to Boston every weekend. Yeah. I need something to do around here. Like, and I think we can like make it happen. And it took 2 weekends, and like the whole staff loved it. And like, I remember he shot me a text, and he was like, hey man, like, how would you feel about doing this every week? And I remember being like, yo. And like, again, it's, I know it's like, it for like, it may be something just as small as that, but like, that was that one moment of like that one don't be a pussy moment. Yep. Where I just went up to him at the gym one day, and I was like, hey man, like, let me try and do this. And just taking that leap, you know, having faith. I think that's another thing too, man, is like, not a lot of people like trust in the process, especially younger guys like me and you. You know, they may get knocked down a few times, and that may be it for them. Or they may just fall into like one of those like kind of complacency traps where like they find decent job, you know, they got a girl or a guy or whatever, and like they're able to just you know, live out their lives just however they want. I think. Well,
that, and like I'll go back to the reason for this podcast, because you have either like people who really just don't take the leap, or they don't trust the process. It's, I think, one of two reasons. One, they see like the Cardones, who are like, this is too good to be true. Or they don't have, like, I get it. And again, like, I'm not demonizing these larger success stories, because I think they have their place. But I think when it's the only thing that you hear, the only time you see entrepreneurs or anybody who's like, you know, made their own brand, whether it's personal brand or an extension of their personal brand, whatever it is, all you see is once they have uber success, they start putting themselves out there. They start giving the content. They start providing the value, but they provide it at such a high level that it seems too good to be true.
Yeah, and I think, like, I mean, dude, like, that shit costs money, bro. Like, a lot of these guys that maybe have, like, built their success up, kind of like similar to me and you, like, we maybe not necessarily have a lot, but we know we're going to be able to build that foundation. Like, you don't just, a home just doesn't come like that. Like, you got to start from the ground up. And I think like, is there anybody that you follow that is a super successful position that you've been following since like day one, and that you're like, man, like, to watch like the track progression over the years is like mind-boggling to me? Is there anybody that you can think of on the top of your head? Like,
yeah,
from like an influencer standpoint.
Yeah, there's one guy, his name's Ryan Pineda.
Why does he sound familiar?
He's like a Filipino guy. He always has like crazy colored hair, or he hasn't lately. Okay. I don't think. He's a real estate guy.
Got it. Okay,
and
that sounds familiar.
He started flipping homes, but I remember when he was like a micro influencer.
Okay.
So I don't know. He maybe had like 50,000 followers, and he's got millions across platforms now. And I just remember this guy starting out just talking about real estate in general. Now he's created an entire empire. Has a CPA firm. He has an entire he has an entire brand called Wealthy Way, but CPA firm is part of that. Flipping homes course, wholesaling course. He's got social media content courses and editing. It's crazy, the empire he's built. And, you know, that's somebody you can bring value from, because you sort of, even though you saw him at a pretty successful state, you saw him grow to an even more successful. Same thing like Hermosi. The reason he's doing what he's doing, he always says at the beginning of his podcast, he's like, I wish Bezos and Musk and Gates and Buffett all had a camera to record themselves from their garages and their computers in their garages to now.
Well,
and he's doing that now.
Those guys don't have enough time for that shit.
No, they don't. But like
now, I think in today's day and age, like especially being in a higher up platform position, like it's almost like the requests from people to want to like see, like I see a lot of like day in the life of like CEO or day in the life of X, and I honestly like I used to watch those a lot because it's like I don't want to know like what you're doing in terms of your work, like data. Like I want to know like what is like your whole fucking routine look like?
Right.
Like how do you like condone like and tie in your personal life? Like that's what I so like I know it's gonna sound crazy, but like I remember following Christian Guzman before like Alpha League, even the name even started.
Really?
Like this was back in like when I first started getting into fitness, like really into like in high school. I think it was like 20, like probably like 14, 15, maybe even like closer to like my senior year of high school. Like I really started diving into it. He's one of those guys like I watched because it was again consistency, and he was always constantly evolving his content into like making it more, whether it's visually appealing or just like showing like the real ins and outs of like what he was trying to do, and like seeing the progression like year to year to year. And seeing what he's built with Alpha Land is like, dude, I remember watching that whole series and just being like, holy shit. Like the guy was like barely sleeping, like whatever, but he had like this, he said this one thing, he was like, when there's pressure applied on you, and I'm not just talking like work pressure, I'm talking when you got people counting on you for getting shit done, that puts a different fire in your head. And I remember just like seeing like how like that over time and like where he's at now, and like again he's like one of my idols, dude. But it's mainly because as much as a lot of his things are very flashy and like fabricated now, and like he has a great team around him and stuff like that, but like I remember just watching him with the camera in front of him, dude, and just like being real and just like being open about like the real struggles, like what.
Well, that's what we need more of. Like you just
I hate sure I don't really like it's, and especially how I go about like training people and shit like that. Like I kind of keep it a buck. Like I keep it very to the point and like realistic, meaning like, listen, I'm always gonna try and help people get to their goals and stuff like that, but I'm also gonna allow people to realize that like fitness, or at least like working out, is only like 10% of the battle. What are you doing outside of this that's going to correlate to like what you actually want to do? And if you're not doing that, then like it's hard to like look at just working out as like the thing that's like, oh, like it's not working out because of this. No, it's probably because of 3 or 4 other reasons that are probably going on that you maybe not even thinking about, but it's like you're looking at this as the main thing because it's like you have something that you work with and that you're expecting a result and still be able to go live your lives the way that you are. I'm like, no, man, like, no matter what, I'm a big firm believer that, like, you do have certain goals in mind. Like, what your day-to-day life looks like is going to take the amount of time it's going to take to get there.
Right.
Like, if I had a goal for, like, X, I can get it done in a year, or I can get it done in 3 months. It's going to be a lot of fucking work in 3 months in comparison to a year. But that's the choice we have to make every day. Like, when do you want to get it done? You know, and I think for me, like, that's why I always have to write things down every year, because it's like, if I don't hold myself to getting those things done every year, I'm just going to keep pushing them and pushing them and pushing them. And then I keep revolving myself in this cycle where, like, yeah, like, things are good, but, like, things are not happening.
Well, it's kind of like Parkinson's law, where it's you're going to complete a task in the allotted amount of time that you give yourself. So if you give yourself an hour to mow the lawn, you're going to mow it in an hour. If you give it 2, it's going to take all of 2. So same idea with goals. It's like, all right, let's say I want to make $100,000 in a year.
Yeah.
12 months. And I say, okay, that's my annual goal, but let's narrow this down to 3 months. All right, maybe I'll only make $50,000 in that 3 months. But do the math. I get 4 3-month periods. That's $200,000 a year. So even though I didn't hit my $100,000 in 3 months, you accumulated, and if you divide that scale up by what you gave yourself, you doubled your production by just having what your allotted time to complete it was. So like I'm a big believer in taking how much time you think you can do something and cutting it in half and completing it in half. And even if you don't get it fully done in half the time, you got most of it done.
Yeah, because I think for me, like, especially growing up, like, I mean, I'll be the first to admit, like, I was a big procrastinator of just, like, I mean, I still, like, don't get me wrong, I had my moments where, like, procrastination's definitely there, but I think I get way more in my head now when, like, shit isn't, like, organized, planned, done. Like, there's nights where I can't sleep knowing that I probably could have done something the day before and that I need to get it done. Like, I've had nights where I've gotten up at 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm tossing and turning for 30 minutes just thinking about it. And I remember one of my doctor, who was actually like one of my clients, it's kind of funny like how we kind of tie all that in, but one of the biggest things he told me is like, dude, if you can't fall back to sleep in 20 minutes, just get up and go do shit.
Yeah. Like,
don't try and like get yourself to go back to sleep because you're going to start pissing yourself off more or whatever. And I think a lot of my like kind of anxiety spikes or whatever come from like just general lack of preparation. If like, especially if it's something that I'm not really like engaged with or something I'm really not focused on, but I know I like have to get it done because I'm going to feel so much better after the fact of knowing I got it done. I can check it off my list and go to bed a little bit more at ease and like at peace. And I think that's going to take time for me to like get better at because I'm not the greatest at it, but I'm constantly trying to get myself to get better at it because as much as I love working, I know like it's going to get myself to a point where I start negating other avenues in my life that really do need attention, you know? And again, going back to like the experiences, like sometimes like even like not really thinking about how much time has really gone on and like things go on and then all of a sudden it's like over and then you're like, oh shit, like I wish I like was more engaged with like just being in the moment rather than just me just again thinking about what's the next step or like what am I going to do after this is all said and done.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just end off with this because I remember going back to that. I remember closing after the sale of this property, like not buying it. I walked out of the attorney's office and I was dead silent, ride for 45 minutes home. Like I was shitting bricks. No fun in that at all. After I sold it though, I had about 3 minutes of happiness and I watched like the wires. I saw the money go on and I'm like, this is fucking ridiculous. I've never seen this money in my own account. So, like, kind of piggybacking off your point, that's an area where I think I, too, need to, like, work on that satisfaction because, like, I could probably use more than 3 minutes to be like, this has been my dream for the past 4 years.
Where do you think that comes from with you? Like, does that stem from, like, anything that you had gone through, like, in your early years or your childhood or whatever? Like, I'm like, bro, you're super ambitious. I think that's sort of another thing that, like, not a lot of kids, 19, 20-year-olds get to say is, like, you're super ambitious about like what you got to get done, and especially from a maturity standpoint. But there's always a driving force for something. So like, what was it for you that like that's getting you into this point? Because like I'll tell you, like for me, it was not being accepted by others really like early on in my life, like being bullied a lot and like stuff like that. I've put myself in a position where like wanting to be accepted, or helping others feel that feeling of just being like accepted and comfortable and stuff like that is like why I do what I do now, or to make people happy. I mean, shit, like that's why I think for me, like I always try to outwork that because like there were certain things that have gone on in my life that have brought me to where I'm at now, where like I have a little bit of trouble time like being more appreciative and grateful for just like taking a step back and being appreciative of those times. So is there anything that really happened with you that like has brought you to this point, or have you always been like this?
Oh, I've always like my goals have always been 5 steps ahead of, or 5 steps further than I think most people's have. Like when I think about income and when I think about like where I should be, I realistically for your average investor, I think at 25 I should be where your average investor is at 50. So like the goals that I have are set so insanely high.
Yeah, but
I don't know where that comes from. one of the things I guess I can think of is like, you know, and I hate to bring it up like this, but I mean, you know my mom and Steve enough, and even my dad, and he does very well for himself too. And just kind of growing up in an area where I've grown up.
That's not
pretty
like,
fortunate.
You need to like also like be cool with like opening up about that.
Well, so
like you've had prominent figures, especially role models within your parents, who you see every day, and they're on that same grind. And I think for you, maybe just seeing it from a step back, because even with like your brother too, like he's the same way, man. Like you guys are go-getters because you live with go-getters. Right. Like I'm blue collar, like I'm hardworking because I grew up in a blue collar, hardworking household, and like respectable household.
And your idea is to be like one step better, and not saying better in terms of demonizing your parents for what they were, but it's always like I want my kids to be better than I was.
Damn right.
So
that's what my parents always tell me.
Well, and so that's the idea. And so like the way I've grown up, I've always looked at the mindset as baseline. I've like the expectations I have for people in society are so usually very high and sometimes unrealistic, but I've grown up in a very just organized go-getter, and you know, I mean just even when it comes to income, like my base level of income and what I think is normal is I think slightly higher than
that too. And I think like being in like your position where like you had, we'll call it comfortability, right? You could probably have gone the other route and have been able to live out your life, you know, as a 19, 20-year-old kid, and be able to like live through like the means of like what your parents have been able to like set out and like provide for you guys. Maybe more so than like what other kids in your position have. But I think for you used it as a motivational force rather than it being something where like, all right, if it doesn't work out, I got something to fall back on. No, like for something that's going on in your head, that's honestly like, I really do appreciate it. And like, I look up to that because regardless of what position you're in, or a position of like knowing that you have a little bit of something on the back end, if God forbid, like you see it as like, I don't have that still.
Well, I don't.
Yeah.
Like when I used to always get, and I don't even want to say like bullied, but I was always like expected to pay for everything when me and my buddies would go out. It was that idea. Like I always used to get called rich. That was the you're rich, and the expectation used to be like that. And
I cover the shit.
I cover the shit, but I always used to roll back on like, listen, I'm not. It's not my money. It will never be my money. It is.
I think for, and I love that too, because I think at least just hearing it from you, like you are grateful for what they've been able to provide for you, but like you're at a point now where you want to be able to do that for yourself,
right?
And be able to like be satisfied knowing it's coming from you and it's not coming from an outside source, or it's not coming from people.
What they taught me was teach a man to fish. Like they taught me how to make money, not here's money. So like they taught me how to fish. They didn't give me the fish, and so like that, they're obviously beneficial because they know how to fish. They know how to make the money, and so they gave me the most important thing in the world, which is knowledge. They didn't hand me the money. They didn't hand me the result. They didn't hand me the gift.
But I think for me especially, like I'd rather, and it goes back to like measuring success of experience versus like dollar value. I will take that experience 99% of the time over a dollar amount, because money comes and goes, man. I can make money, and I'm also really good at losing money. Well, not necessarily losing money, but like putting it towards spending money. Yeah, like spending it towards things that I know are gonna like maybe benefit me in the future. Like, I mean, dude, DJ equipment's no joke. Like, I remember like walking out of like the Guitar Center, and I dropped like, my parents are gonna listen to this, they're gonna be like, what the hell? I remember dropping like almost like $1,300-1,500 like all at once, just on like things that I needed. Mm-hmm. And I never like, I'm not, and again, like when I spend that like kind of money and like that's, and I know it may not seem like a lot, but like for someone who's like, who was living on, I've been living on my own since I was, 2021. I've been on my own, like living up here since I was 18. So like, again, like not really like having the chance to like go home or like live at home, or like, I've always had to like pay rent. I've always had to like stay on my shit. And like for someone like my age and like having to spend all that money at once, like yeah, it's a little nerve-wracking for me, but I think like I see like the light at the end of the tunnel, like why I'm doing it in the first place. And like and again, taking like that kind of leap and trusting and knowing that like for me, man, like money will always come and go. Like I know, especially when I'm older, my goal is comfortability. No doubt about it. I don't even want my kids to even have a remote thought of thinking that they're gonna struggle. But I think is why I look at your parents as also like role models as well. And you know, even the conversation, the connections I have, they've never let you guys think that. They've never let y'all be like, yeah, you guys have it easy, things like whatever. Like it's fine. No, like they made you guys work your ass off to like earn it. Because it doesn't stop and it never will. And I think that's important to instill early on. I think for my parents, it was like, you guys aren't going to ever get handed anything. Realize that shit. You better go out and go work for it. And it's the same thing with my older siblings. Like my oldest brother, super successful, you know, in the business world. And my other brother, he works for UPS as well. They both live out in Arizona. But, you know, seeing the point of success they're at now, it's just same amount of effort, same amount of work you got to put in every day and doing it more than anybody else does because, again, things are going to work out. They have greater goals in mind.
Yeah, exactly.
Hell yeah.
But, all right, so switching gears a little bit. So I do this every episode.
Right on.
So last guest, I had ask a question to the next guest, but I don't tell them who it is. So they have no idea who it is. The question that they have to ask is supposed to yield an answer from you.
Oh,
that's going to benefit somebody.
Everybody.
So the way and then I'm going to have you ask a question to the next guest, and the question you ask has to be formulated in a way where somebody, whoever it is, whatever profession, can answer it in a way that brings value.
Got it. Okay.
To the younger guys.
Cool.
Younger guys and girls. So this kid asked, what are you grateful for in your work life, family life, and mental/spiritual life? So we'll start with work life.
I think the biggest thing that I'm grateful for in my work life is each and every day it's something different. I get to work with a lot of awesome individuals. I'm not even just talking like both athletes and just, you know, normal general population clients that I've grown really close with over the years. And again, it's something different every day in regards whether it's a stress or whether it's a benefit or something positive that comes out of it. I'm going into the day with an open mind. I'm not going to the day of like already expecting like what's going to go down or already having an expectation like, all right, this is how it's going to go. Let's go through the motions. No, like I always got to be on my A game. And I think that's why I'm appreciative like how my job is because I mean, it's a constant resume every day. Like you're putting yourself out there to people who are investing money, time, energy, effort, and making sure that like you're putting out a great product. Regardless of how you feel. So for me, it's like I get to do what I love to do, which is just train and like make people happy. And it be something different every day, whether it's a professional athlete or whether it's a 10-year-old. It's like my ability to be able to adjust gears and communicate on different levels of intelligence. Like one of my strength coaches from college always used to say, like, if you can't dumb it down to a 5-year-old, like you don't know it. And I always used to think, I'm like, you know what, you got a good point. Because I think with me, like the reason why I work well with kids is because like, I mean, I am a kid, dude. I'm a kid at heart. And like, I try to bring myself down to like that level where like, they can understand and grasp, but like know like what has to get done on a given day. So I think from a work standpoint, that's what I'm grateful for. My day is always different. It's always something unique, always something fun. And I mean, bro, like I get to wear gym shorts to fucking work every day, man. That shit's awesome. Are you kidding me? So it was work life,
family life.
So family life. I mean, so I have all 4 of my brother's initials tattooed on my arm. Family's everything to me, man. My mom's one of 7. You know, my dad, you know, he has 2 other siblings as well. I have like 30 plus first cousins. We always used to get together with each other all the time, especially when I was living back in Jersey. And obviously, like us, you know, getting older, and it's not as prominent, but like even when we are together, like it's like, you know, I saw them yesterday. And it doesn't matter. Like I'm super close with my family. I know they can call me at any time or I can call them at any time. Me and my mom, are like, that's my best friend, dude. Like I said, like my dad too. Like me and my mom have a little bit of a kind of like a different relationship in regards to just like where she's more of like the energetic, like fun one, and my dad is more of like the, like diligent, like sensitive, like in that kind of ordeal, like really on top of his stuff. And like my mom is like, we can relate a little bit more on like just someone more of like the personal stuff. And I remember we went to an Alicia Keys concert like a few weeks ago in Boston. That's like our favorite singer, dude. And we were fourth row. And I remember just like that moment and like being able to share that with like my mom, especially after all the stuff that has gone on over the years, is something like I'll never forget. Right. And like recently, like my youngest brother Tommy moved in with me. I lived in a 2-bedroom like duplex like by myself for like a few months, and like for him, he's 21 years old and he's just trying to figure it out. And it wasn't really working out for him in Jersey, and I told my mom like have him come move up here with me, and I'll get him a job at Drive, and he'll really learn what it means to like take that next step in your life. And obviously like we had like that typical sibling rivalry, whatnot, growing up and stuff like that. But we're also all super close. And I think I'm very fortunate now that he gets to live with me and we're as tight as we are. Because we didn't really have that relationship.
So he's
growing up. So he's here now, man. Yeah, he's awesome, dude. All 4 of my siblings are, but the fact that I actually have a piece of home with me now.
Right.
When I didn't have that for a while, like I'm grateful for that.
That's
because
awesome.
It's just me, him, my dog Andy, and life has been a lot easier. Life has been a lot better knowing that he's around and stuff like that. So at least from a family standpoint, like I always put them first. Like whatever I have to do, like I'm always trying to be like the kind of the glue that kind of holds everything together for sure.
I like that.
And then spiritually,
mentally or spiritually, like however you want to approach that one.
I think I've always been I'm a big advocate of my faith. I think over the years it's been a little tougher, obviously, with just like circumstances and things that have gone on and stuff like that. But I've never like lost sight of that. Like we were in the church a lot, like growing up and stuff like that. And my parents always used to put us together, make us go on mission trips. And I've had some of my best memories, some of my best times, like on those mission trips. And again, a lot of that has to come with like seeing the impact you can have on people. And I think like tying into like my own mental health. I mean, dude, like a few years ago, I was really struggling. Like it wasn't pretty. And I had those like ebbs and flows like in my life where like mentally, like I just been so like gone. I'm grateful now that I was able a few years back, or just, maybe a year and a half ago, just me finally saying like, enough is enough and I need some help. And, I do see a therapist once or twice a month, and she's been awesome for me to just be able to learn more about myself and like where are some things that I need to improve on, or where are some things that honestly in my life are like really, really good. And like just, again, not being so worried about the next thing, being able to like address things in a different light, and being able to have more self-awareness of like my state and like what I have to do to like kind of push through that and see the light at the end of the tunnel, because it could be really dark sometimes, man. Like I've gone through it, dude, and I put up this front that like I got it all, everything's good and everything's right and everything's positive, but it's really not. But I think no matter what, I've always been able, no matter how many times I've gotten kicked down, I've been able to like get back up, wipe my face and just be like, all right, let's go. You know what I mean? You gotta do it. And
football probably teaches you that too.
Yeah, but it was you were channeling it differently in football.
Right.
Like you're letting it out through aggression, not through like actual.
You don't have to harness it.
Yeah, man. Like because at the end of the day, like you can let it out from aggression, but then it's like you're not getting really much out of it because you're still going back to those thoughts after.
Right.
So having my ability now to like actually like sit down with myself and, again, like work myself through those times where I may be like having a little bit of self-doubt, or maybe not believing that it's going to work out, or maybe just questioning like why the fuck is there something wrong going on again? And it's all meant to happen, dude. And I've learned that way more over the years now than more than ever, is like things are meant to happen for a reason. Like things go on, whether it's good or bad, because it's meant to bring you to a bigger point in your life. And I think for me now more than ever, like I'm really happy with how life is, and I haven't really had a chance to really say that, even like out loud, because I'm constantly trying to like improve it. But for me to perfectionism, yeah, man. But for me to just be able to sit down and just have a normal conversation with you and really look back on it, like, yeah, man, like I'm one of the first times like I'm really stoked with how life is going right now and like what I need to do to continually make strides and efforts in making that better. I didn't have that before. I was looking to other avenues for making myself feel better, and it was just fucking getting me nowhere. And made me felt good in the heat of the moment. Didn't feel good after the fact because I was still stuck in my cycle. But I think now, like learning through those things and just being able to come out on top and just be like, you got a lot of life left to live, bro. This is just the start, man. And again, having connected with such amazing people and even learning from them. I've had clients do so much for me. I've had clients take me on trips, invite me to their homes, bring me to, I went to my first Celtics game and my first Brewing game thanks to clients I have. Like, really? It's like, again, man, experiences over anything. It's just from the people that you get a chance to meet and stuff. It's like, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for that. And so I think to ask kind of the next person, I think a question that, I'm still trying to like continuously evolve and like get better at is like, when there's so much outside noise or when there's so many different avenues of information out there or anything like that, like where do you find a route to why you do the things that you do? I think so basically like kind of tying it all in, I think to kind of summarize the question, it'd be like, what is your driving force or why do you do what you do outside of outside influences? Like
what's the mission? What's the purpose?
What is your purpose for like why you handle yourself the way that you do? And I think like that's outside of business, bro. Like you can put that down. Like how do you like go about yourself and just how you handle yourself, whether it was prior experiences or influences that you may have or whatever. Like what has gotten you to the point where you have to, no matter what, get up every day and have an idea of like why you're doing it. Because if you're waking up every day and you're just like, you're stuck or you're pissed off or you're upset and you're just like, why the hell am I doing this? Then like, you're just going to be constantly revolved in that trap. And again, regardless of how you felt in the given morning, like I'm still waking up regardless of how my energy levels are or like how my mood is. And I'm like, there's a reason why I'm getting up, dude. There's a reason why. There's a greater purpose at the end of this. Like, what is like your driving motivational forces that has come beforehand and what are you trying to seek in after? So I think that's something I would definitely love to ask someone because it's something that I'm still working through every day is like, what is your driving force and why do you do what you do? And I'm not talking business. Right. I'm talking in your relationships, your hobbies, your whatever. It doesn't matter. Like, why do you do what you do? Because I think we're all always trying to figure that out. But I think some people have a lot more of a firm understanding than others. Right. Or maybe they don't look as deep, for someone who may be similar to you where they're super analytical and stuff, like, yeah, they have big goals in mind written out and stuff like that. But like the reason why I wanted to ask you some deeper questions as to like, hey man, like why are you the way that you are? And it maybe took you a second to be like, I don't know why. But then you were able to answer it and be like, well, I've had influences in my life that have brought me to this point because they've shown me the way. They didn't give me the fish, they gave me the pole to go get it. Right. And that's what it is, man. Like, don't ever be like afraid to like kind of like admit that too, because we all have certain reasons of why we do things. Regardless of if we were put in like a really good position of success or we had to start from the ground up, it doesn't matter. Like we still have to go about our business every day, and there's, and time is of the essence. So, if we're not working towards something every day, it could be something as small as doing X or, again, being able to do a lot of things in a certain amount of time. I think that's another thing too, is like, what are you doing with the time that you're given? Because we got one life to live, man, and people are dropping like flies every day. Mm-hmm. And it's like, as sad as it is, like it puts more of a realistic spin in my head. I'm like, you know what, man? Like, regardless of how you're feeling right now, you got nothing behind you. You got to go. You know?
Yeah, there's no option.
There's no option.
There's no option.
There's no option. I think it's important to realize. Like for me, there's just no other. There's no other option.
Which might be like nice to have, like the idea of not having much to lose. You know what I mean? Like the idea, like us starting young, we don't have much to lose. Like
No.
I always feel bad for the people starting what they love to do when they have a family to provide
or in their
for.
30s
in
and
their
shit.
30s, and it's like one of the reasons I do what I do at the age that I do, and I pay my dues
because you want to be able to enjoy that.
I want to enjoy that
with
with family, and like that's really like if you're if you ask me a fiscal goal, like that's why I don't like telling people like, oh, I do this because I want to make money, or this is my goal, because I have fiscal goals, I have familial goals, I have personal goals, like they don't overlap.
Yeah,
Like, I don't have one goal that's more important than the other. Well, I guess my biggest goal would be to create this, this figure and everything that comes with me, whether that be, setting the example for my kids from a fitness standpoint, a stoicism standpoint, a financial standpoint, a respect standpoint. Everything I'm doing now is to regiment myself so that really, like, my family, but more so my own children, can look at me and, again, take just my example without me ever providing them anything additional. They can just take from my example the pull. And they
I relate that to my parents too, because like they didn't go to college or anything like that, but like, man, they put themselves in an awesome position by like them working their ass off and putting their head down and go. Like that was the biggest thing I learned from my dad is like, you gotta put your head down and go, bro. Yeah. Like, no one gives a fuck.
No one gives a fuck.
No one and like he would still get up every day and do it.
Yep.
And he's still continuing to do it. And like at almost 57 years old, 58 years old, and doing it for so long that like, but it's just knowing that there's way deeper shit as to why you're doing it. Like for my dad, like he's a family first guy, and he's very simple. That's another thing I've come to realize over the years is like material things are cool and like experiences and whatnot are fun, but I think just the little things are what I like really value the most. And like I'm talking just like having a few hours like with my dog, because even though I'm so busy during the week, just having that little bit of time either on the weekends or just like when I go home, just having that time with him or whatever. It's little things like that maybe you take for granted, but you realize like, damn, how much it really does make an impact on you over time. So yeah, man, I think like the definitely the next question I would like to ask somebody is like, what is your driving force, or why do you do what you do every day, regardless of business or anything like that, tied into their personal life, tied into just like how they like handle themselves every day or how they present themselves to others. Like there's a reason why I always try and put my best self forward with anybody I come across, or like trying to be as like personable as I can with anybody I come across, because you never know. Like I never really know at this point like what the greater impact it's gonna have on somebody. But then like you see those impacts happening, and then people start to like thank you and shit, and like that's all I need, man. Like fuck the money, like whatever. I want people to be able to come up to me or like put me aside and just be like, yo, like you've helped change my life. Like you've helped put me in a position where like I can love myself again, and I can love, others around me because of your resilience to making sure that was happening.
Right.
And again, like that's out, that there's no dollar amount that can attest to that for me. And I know that's why, like, as I started to get older and as I started to make bigger moves towards making things happen, like it's always going to be like, hey, I'm just going to be myself, whether you like it or not. If you don't like it, go fuck yourself. But like, if you do like it, and I'm like, let's get to work. Because
right.
like, I'm always trying to, make an impact in any way that I can, whether it's a learning aspect with training or just a fun aspect with DJing, and just like creating that. Again, it's creating experience at the end of the day. Creating what you're doing, man, you're creating experience for guys like myself or even like younger guys who are just starting off and are just in a position now to let people know that like we gotta start from square one,
right?
And that just because we're young and that just because we may not have a lot to like fall back on and stuff like that, or we may have a lot to lose, like we're not thinking in that way. Like we're constantly thinking of like what's gonna be our end all be all goal once this is all said and done, man. Like this is a dope ass setup, but this ain't gonna be the setup for you like moving forward, man. Just like my own setup now, like I know my decks and everything I'm using now are it's not gonna be the setup that I'm using in the future. I know like my training style or me even working in a facility, like I know one day I'm gonna be able to like have my own and do everything I can to like again make that experience for whoever's working underneath me or anything like that. Be the same exact approach as my bosses have given me and like those that I've had the opportunity to work with have given me, which again, there's no dollar amount to that because it's experiences above all else. They're going to get you to where you want to be and the connections you're going to make. And that's why I've when I walked in the drive for like the first time, like I just, when you get like those weird gut feelings, man.
It's like euphoric feeling.
That was like Merrimack, bro. Like when I walked on Merrimack campus, I had like that euphoric feeling of being like, this is it. I told my mom, like, I already want to go here. And that was in like the summer. And they didn't even offer me yet. I was like, yeah, I want to go. I just knew. This is where I needed to be. And then when I was going for my internship, like interview with them, I knew this is where I needed to be. And it's like one of those things where like you get directed to it somehow. So like things fall in line somehow, some way. And
trust the process.
Yeah.
That's how the process works.
Damn right, bro.
I'll be your first client at that gym.
My man. Much appreciated, bro.